We're in the series, How to Have a Really Rockin' Life, and I really appreciate that our band really rocks. It's good. Thank you, guys. It's good. It would be tough to do that series, How to Have a Really Rockin' Life, if we just had an organ. I'm just saying. I mean, it's okay. You can do whatever you want, but I'm just grateful. I've told people before, Phos Community Church has a rockin' band because that's what God gave us when we started the church, and Mike decided to come over, and he's a rocker, and so he brought rockers, and it was a good thing. I like it. If God had only given us an organ player, I'm not sure, but I guess we would have figured it out. But anyway, we're really glad that it's that way. So, yeah, that'd be great. I heard your organ got stolen. Are you sure? It might. There might be somebody going a second service to get it, to make sure it doesn't arrive here. So I don't know. If I have some volunteers later, show up and come see me, and we'll go get that thing, and we'll remove it. We'll remove your organ. Okay? It'll be fun. This series has been so much fun for me. It's been a revolutionary series. You know, I've been a Christ follower since I was 13 years old, and that's been a long time now since that happened. And I've learned a lot along the years, but I may have learned the most in just the past 8 or 9, 10 weeks, just going through this, drilling into these words of Jesus, taking them seriously, learning just to let Jesus speak to me in a way that I take it to heart, and then try to put it into practice. And I hope you're doing that. And I hope that's how you're tackling this series and this information is not just as stuff to hear but not do, but if you'll do these things that Jesus talks about, your life will begin to really rock in a really cool way. So that's my hope for you, that this series is there. Now, I also know this. You may not believe anything that I'm sharing, and that's okay. You may be at a place where you're like, I like the music. I'm not sure I like your message. I'm just going to kind of hang out, and that's okay. It's all right. Just hear, and if you feel like you're supposed to take action on it, do. And if you feel like you're not, then don't, and that's okay. We'll love you either way. Is that fair? So you're welcome here. I'm glad you're here, and you take it in and use it if it fits. Now, I'm going to encourage you all to have one of these worship guides, all right? Now, if you don't have one of these, let me get Rebecca running. I know you're close to the door there. If you need one of these, would you raise your hand? Because we're going to go through the sermon notes that are on the back of this. Anybody need one? Because you're going to need to make some notes. There's some stuff in here that won't be on the screens that you're going to need. So Rebecca's going to grab a few more and bring them in. And if you need one, just hold your hand up when she comes back. And this will help you as we navigate through this message today. That will be good for you to have in your hands. All right, the worship guide. Now, this is kind of the premise of today. Anybody need one of those worship guides, by the way? Just hold your hand up real quick. She'll bring it to you. Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate you doing that. All right. Great relationships that reflect the King and His kingdom are priceless. Relationships that really reflect who Jesus is and how he created the world, and that line up with His pattern of living are priceless. Man, they will help your life so much to have relationships that reflect the King and His kingdom. And they are priceless. They are precious. They're not easy to come by, but they can be developed. The great hope I have today is that you can have those kinds of relationships, but to have those kinds of relationships, we have to learn from the master of relationships, Jesus Christ. And so I take His teachings as not just book learning, but stuff to put into practice, and I hope you will too. And it's just important to see it that way. You know, Jesus, in today's message, the title is How to Treat Others. And Jesus teaches us how to treat others by how He treated others. He lived it out in front of us, but He also taught us specifically how to treat others. And He said this. He said, you should treat others the way you want to be treated. You know that is the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. Well, what does that really mean? How does that really take shape? And I want to drill into that today, what it really means to treat others the way you would like to be treated. You know, the challenge we have with the golden rule is that if we set it this way, treat others the way they want to be treated, that may even be the platinum rule. It may be even better. However, when you think about treating others the way you want to be treated, here's what's going on inside of some of us. Some of us don't like ourselves very much. Seriously, think about it. Some of us have not forgiven ourselves for something we did a long time ago. Even though we say we believe in Jesus and we say we've accepted his forgiveness and we say that that we really are followers of Jesus, we've never really taken his forgiveness all the way into our heart and let it change us in a way that we actually forgive ourselves. Now, you may not be there right now. Hopefully you've come through that zone, but if you're there, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you don't love yourself and you don't forgive yourself and you maybe even hate yourself, it's very hard to love others. Really, I think it's pretty impossible to love others because you indeed do wind up loving them the way you love yourself, which is not very much, or in some harsh way, and you just belittle yourself and you berate yourself and you just are harsh to yourself as you speak to yourself, and that plays out in your life, and it comes from all different kinds of places. There may have been somebody in your life that did something to you a long time ago that hurt you in a way that you've never said anything to anybody. Or maybe you did something you're so ashamed of and so afraid of that you've never said anything to anybody about that. But you carry it deep inside, and because you don't forgive yourself, you don't love like you could love because you don't accept God's love the way it is. Now, I've got a couple of young ladies I'm inviting up here to share with us. Sarah and Katie, why don't you guys come on up? They have dealt with some really tough stuff in their lives where they wrestled with this idea of forgiving themselves, and loving themselves because sometimes it's just hard to do. Sometimes we just have a hard time loving ourselves and forgiving ourselves and accepting ourselves. And when we don't, we pay this huge freight on that in our lives. And that freight comes out in ways that begins to tear us down and begins to hurt us and then begins to hurt other people around us. It's just tough. It's tough to love when we don't love ourselves. Wouldn't you agree? That it's just tough to really be released and to be forgiven when we won't forgive ourselves, even though we know, at least with our heads, oh yeah, God forgives me, Jesus died for me. And we kind of get that up here, but until that moves from our head to our heart, and we own it way down deep inside, where we accept his forgiveness and we accept the new life that's possible, we're kind of trapped. And that can make all the difference in the world. And so let me just ask one of you to pick up on that theme of forgiveness and forgiving yourself and loving yourself in spite of challenges you face. And then we'll back up into your story a little bit in a minute. But one of you pick up on that theme, what it's like to have a hard time forgiving yourself.
The first thing I thought of was 1, 2, 3, not it. So do you want to start? Okay.
So, growing up in church, especially in youth group, a lot of the emphasis was on how to treat others in a Christ-like way, how to behave in a Christ-like way, and how to treat others in a Christ-like way. And that was my biggest stumbling block because I didn't know it at the time, but I was well on my way to an eating disorder. And so I did not know how to view others because I didn't know how to view myself. I tried to model behavior based on what I saw from people I liked or what I saw in media, which was really bad. And so, verses like, love others like you love yourself, I thought, I don't know what that means because I don't love myself. I don't know what that means.
Yeah. It is really hard to love ourselves. You want to take off on that?
Yeah. Well, first, I wouldn't even be here today if I didn't learn how to love myself and how to reach out to others. I came from a 7-year abusive relationship where I couldn't forgive myself for listening to a man that told me that I was worthless and that I was overweight and that I was never going to amount to anything. And I was very disordered in eating because I had some very old scars of unlovability that I had from my childhood where I never really learned how to forgive myself for just existing. And it was a very long and hard process of of stepping into recovery. I'm in 3 years right now from bulimia nervosa, and I have learned so much about Christ's forgiveness, into being able to be here today to talk to you, and then to be able to go ahead and love myself so much that I can go out there and show that love to the world and to reach out to others who need to learn that as well.
Yeah, this unforgiveness inside of us creates this jungle that it's hard to get out of, and it's hard to share that love with anybody else until we accept it.
Right. Bulimia actually comes from the Greek word, just like Phos. It means ox or ravenous or beastly hunger. It is an insatiable beast that you become addicted to, and there is never anything enough because you will never love yourself enough. So when you learn that you are lovable and that nothing that you've ever done will make you unlovable because of Christ's love for you, then you really can understand the truth of his word and how meaningful you are.
Huh? Right? Now, that was worth the price of admission right there. Okay? That was it right there. Yeah.
I remember when, so I also suffered from bulimia for about 6 years. I would tell myself off and on, but really, 6 years. And there was a point when I realized I have this disease, it is out of my control, when I really accepted putting a name to it, and which made it worse, because then I knew everything about bulimia, and then to realize I am one, it really was a beast.
Yeah, you really have like this strange dissociation. You know you're bulimic, but when you actually see it and you put a name on it, you're like, what?
Yes, to realize, like, I'm one of those. And then we're like, well, if I'm one of those, what else does that mean? And so I thought my prayer life, my connection with God just shut off, because I thought, well, I can't talk to him like this. I can't talk to him like this. I've got to fix this, and then I can talk to him. And then it changed over time to then it was a sort of mentally crawling back with very shameful sort of like, I know you may not talk to me, but I really need you. Teach me how to like myself. I think that's the key. I don't know. It was really, I would go off in private and just sort of agonize over, this must be the key. If I liked myself more, I wouldn't do this to myself. So I began to like myself more. That wasn't it. There's a big difference between like and love. And love was the key. And of course, I couldn't really love myself until I could accept that God loved me just as I was. As ugly as I thought I was, as shameful as I thought I was something totally different to him.
That's good. You know, I think that's the key, is that we can't love others until we love ourselves, and we don't truly love ourselves until we've allowed God to love us right where we are, exactly like we are, whatever's going on, that he always sees us as a dearly loved child. See, the good news of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount that we're into, this Matthew 5, 6, and 7, and all of the New Testament, when Jesus portrays the Father, he always portrays the Father coming after a lost one that is far removed from the religious standards, and one who would hide from the church because they're afraid to be seen. But Jesus is always saying to the religious people, you think you're in and you are the beloved? Although I do love you, I still love this lost one, this broken one, this prodigal one, this one who has all this stuff going on. That God is always reaching out through Jesus to us. And until we accept that, we really can't love ourselves. Not the way we were meant to. What happens when you begin to accept love into your heart? What happens when you begin to accept love and forgiveness from God right where you are, without trying to be fixed first? What happens to you?
Amazing things. Well, when you let God's love come in, you realize that he is lining up people in your life and you don't even know it. I used to joke that Corbin tried to kill me, Corbin, Kentucky, and now I'm firmly believing that, and he's from Corbin, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where Corbin, Kentucky is where I almost died, and I mean that in the very literal sense and the very emotional sense as well. I didn't know it, but his work has led me to feel how he has loved me through this and trusted me through this, and he's been putting people in the right places. I have an amazing support group, and I have an amazing therapist, and I have amazing friends in my life, and now I'm doing amazing things because I want to pay it forward. I want to show how alive I am right now.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's awesome. Let me ask you about this picture.
Okay, this is a great picture right here. This
hangs on our wall out front, by the way.
Yeah, this is me.
This is her baptism.
This is different glasses, of course, because I've got fatter ones now. This was in July of 2012, and 2012 was my first year of recovery. My next door neighbor likes to say, because she invited me, in December, I escaped my abusive relationship. I retreated to home. I talked to my neighbor, Pat. Pat, you might see her around. And she's like, girl, you need to come to church with me. And then she's like, girl, we need to go to the support group together. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Everything that I've known has been wrong, so I will try anything. And so I came here, and the first sermon that I heard was the Titanic. And how icebergs in your life will bring you down, and how it's always larger underneath. And I was like, this is it. And she says, I picked the ball up and running, and I ran with it, and I did. And in that wonderful day right there, I gave up everything in my past, and I committed my life to Jesus Christ and his work on the cross. And that was my rebirth. And I know that a lot of people think that once you have the baptism, everything is perfect, and it's not. There is a lot of failing and falling and faltering after that. I equated it to the chapter of Job, like, why? And in Sarah's book, because I wasn't a Christian, I had been in a Christian family. And I've never really accepted Jesus. Like, I just was there. And I read her book in 2 days. And I would have read it in one if I didn't have classes. And it was profound because I could feel how she was a Christian the entire time. And for a long time, I felt alone. I was like, okay, God, you did this to me because I didn't believe in you. And I realized he didn't do anything to me. He brought me to him, and he loved me through it. And he brought me to that baptism, and he brought me here today. And his forgiveness has inspired me to forgive myself and to reach out to others and say, nothing that you have done will ever make you unworthy of being loved. And you are lovable no matter what.
Yeah.
Read her book.
Now, this is what I'm excited about. I mean, you are so right. I mean, this is the gospel right there. You get that, that's it. That you're loved no matter what. And this love transforms us from the inside out and makes us the kind of people that can have great relationships, because then we can love ourselves properly, and then we can love other people. Now, what's going on, this is the process going on, is that Katie's transformation is now impacting other people. This week at your school, you're going to host an event. Tell us about where you go to school and what you're doing.
Okay, so first of all, IU representing. And before anybody says anything about sports, I want you all to know I only care about baseball, okay? That's it. Also, we have 9 Nobel Prizes. This week, this Monday, kicks off the National Eating Disorder Association, or NEDA's, Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And as the non-traditional student vice president, and I have decided that what we're going to do at campus this Thursday is we are going to host an Eating Disorder Awareness Day health fair with a guest speaker. We are going to open up our doors in the Hoosier Room to health professionals that come out and promote a environment of awareness and recovery, and reach out to people with our guest speaker, Sarah. She's going to be coming, and our I know, and my support group personally has donated the money to buy her books and give them out as door prizes so that everybody can hear the message, and that if we can help just one person, because that's what we need to do. Sarah said the most beautiful thing to me at Starbucks when we were meeting. Do you want me to say it, or do you want to tell me what it was? Okay. She told me, and this is really profound, is that when you have an eating disorder and you're in recovery, you don't look back. You don't see the people that are coming in behind you. And the sad fact is that there are always people coming in behind us. And we need to help them, because it is a silent, and it is a secret, and it is a hidden mental illness that we need to reach people out. We need to reach out to people. And if I can put myself out there, and if she can put herself out there, and we can get the word out for one person, and if one person can come and learn the love that we've learned, then we have done God's work. We have loved ourselves like He has loved us, so that we can go out and love another human being and tell them they can do it.
There you go. Yes, right.
Sorry,
Amen.
it's long-winded.
Yeah, that's it. Now, so these two, what's interesting is they came to us separate tracks, different tracks. Now, I've known Sarah a long time. And I didn't realize you had an eating disorder till a few years ago. We talked. It may have been 18 months ago, 2 years. I don't remember exactly when. And you began to lay that out for me, and we talked some. And she's in this active recovery, and she said, I think I want to write a book.
The craziest idea I ever had.
Yeah. And I said, I think you should write the book. Here's the book. Okay? Yeah. And it's called Brilliant Disguise, An Ugly Story of Beautiful Redemption. And Sarah's going to be available after worship. Both these ladies are going to be available over in the cafe. The books are there. There may be somebody you need to pick this up for and get this and take it to them. Sarah, because of your journey and because you let God love you, now you're loving other people. How do you see this book as an act of love of God using you to love other people?
I hope the book serves sort of as a gateway to hope. One reason I say it was a crazy idea that, well, for one, be careful what you say you won't ever do. One of them was, I said, I'll never write a book. And I have. And I thought, I was a bulimic in secret. I didn't want to tell anyone. I didn't see the point of telling anyone, because what could they do for me? If I couldn't help myself, how could they help me? Was my thought. It was very wrong. And so even in recovery, I thought, well, this is behind me. I've recovered. I won't go there again.
It's never like that.
Right. And I left it like that for several years until there were a series of events at church, actually. Things people said, things that I saw. And I just got a very heavy burden for this doesn't go away. It is, someone is always coming behind us. If I leave space for someone else to fall into the same trap. And I felt not really ashamed, but just so crushed that I wasn't doing anything. And so I thought for a while about, well, what could I do? Because you would not like it if I walked up to you and said, I think you might have an eating disorder. Let's talk. So I thought of, what could be other ways, and so I thought about, well, maybe I could just write the story. I could do stories well, I think. And so I started writing it, and I kept writing, and I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell my husband, Drew. I really started writing when everyone else was asleep so no one would know, because I didn't know what to do with it really. And then I talked to Jeff. I was like, I don't know. So I told him, like, maybe I'm thinking about this, writing this book, and I already had 6 chapters done. I'm one of those, like, I put my toe in the water and think, should I do this? And then there was also a good time. My conversation with you was very well timed, I think, by God, because there were a lot of things that were just coming to a head at one point of, I have to start living my life deliberately to help others. And not just those who struggle with eating disorders, because an eating disorder is an addiction, like many other things that are an addiction. And recovery from this addiction is very similar to recovery from other addictions. If you don't have hope that you can recover, your battle is much, much more difficult. And if you can't love yourself, care for yourself, your battle is much, 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 much more difficult. Mm-hmm. Because it takes, of course, being able to love yourself, being able to accept what other people are willing to do for you, accept the love from other people, accept the love from Christ. That was a floodgate of a combination of joy, hope, and the right kind of it doesn't matter anymore. All those things I was concerned about, I was like, who cares? It doesn't matter. Who cares? I don't care what you say. I don't care what you think. Fine. I'm going my way, and my way is God's way. And that was the right kind of go my own way.
Yeah, to be loved, just to accept it. Yeah, I got this deal. I'm going to work through this deal with hope and power and forgiveness and all the things that God could give you that you couldn't really give yourself.
Right.
I mean, we try to make ourselves feel better and boost our self-esteem and just feel better about our stuff when we know that it's until we just accept forgiveness and then forgive ourselves, we are absolutely stuck. Wouldn't you agree?
And I swore I would not be quiet anymore.
Good for you. Thanks for not being quiet. These guys, thank you so much. Powerful stuff. Appreciate you guys coming up.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you a ton. Thank you a ton. That is excellent, excellent stuff. And see, that's what happens when you allow God to love you and forgive you. Then He can use you as a channel to love and forgive other people. It is not what you would want. And when you have a right relationship with yourself because of what God has done for you, then you can really love other people. Paul, who wrote many of the books in the New Testament, says that he writes to the church in Rome in the book of Romans. He says this. He said, while we were still messed up, while we were still trapped in our sin, Christ died for us. Not after we got cleaned up, fixed up, put together, pulled together, but before, when we were still trapped in our junk, when we still didn't forgive ourselves, when we still didn't love ourselves, Christ loved us. God loved us, and He sent Christ on a mission to save us and to buy us back. Isn't that cool? So let's talk a little bit about this idea. I'm going to do kind of a quick run through on some principles that Jesus has taught us in the Sermon on the Mount. I limited the scope of what I'm going to share about Jesus' teaching about great relationships to the Sermon on the Mount, just these 3 chapters of Scripture, so you can really drill these and study these this week. And let's go back to just what Jesus says. So whatever you wish others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. This is what Jesus boils it all down to. All of these laws, hundreds of laws in the Old Testament, hundreds of commands, and then all the added stuff that religious people were trying to add to it. He says it's all about this. It's all about this. Do to others like you'd have them do to you, and that's it. Now Jesus gives a corollary statement somewhere else in the book of Matthew. He says he's asked, well, what's the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus said to them, you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love others the way that you love yourself. Love your neighbor the way you love yourself. So very similar. So these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Jesus kind of wraps it up. It's pretty simple teaching, but it's not necessarily easy to do. So I want to get more specific with this, some relationship principles that will help you. There are 10 at least. There's probably a bajillion more, but here's a few, okay? These all come out of Sermon on the Mount. You'll need to study these more on your own. I don't have time to develop them as fully as I might like, but number one, be merciful. And I would say, and these are not on the screen, but they are in the sermon note card on the back. Number one, be merciful. Be merciful to yourself first. Show some mercy. Man, love yourself. It's okay. No matter what you've got going on, no matter what addiction, no matter what problem, no matter what challenge, start by knowing you are loved by God. Number two, this is powerful. Don't let poop stack up. Okay? Here's what I mean. You got something going on with yourself, deal with it. Deal with God. And if you have something with somebody between you and somebody that you care about, you want to have a right relationship with them, you got to clean up the poop. You can't let it stack up. If it stacks up, it gets stinky and bad. And it will destroy the relationship. So there's got to be time when you come clean and you talk about what's bugging you that's happening with the other person. They may be ticking you off and they don't even know it. Happens to me all the time. People have to come to me and say, do you know when you did this that it really, I'm like, I had no idea. I don't remember even saying it, but I appreciate you bringing it up, and let's talk. Because rarely do I want to just kill somebody or blow them up with what I'm saying, although sometimes it happens, or what I'm doing. So don't let poop stack up. Yeah, I said it. You should write it down, okay? You can use a different word if you want. Number 3, okay? Don't blow up a relationship hastily. Don't just throw away relationships, but hang on to them. And you can go read the context. I give you the verses beside each one. This is when Jesus is talking about divorce. This is about relationships, not just about a husband and wife, but any of your relationships. Don't just throw them away easily. Don't just treat relationships with people you love and with people that you should care about. Don't just throw them away like they're styrofoam plates. I mean, these are precious gifts that God gives to us in other people. So we've got to take care of these relationships. Number 4, simply tell the truth. Just tell the truth. Just real simple. Yes and no. Just say yes and no. Don't hit back. Number 6, don't insist on your rights all the time. You don't always have to be right. And even if you're right, you still don't have to be right sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes you get all caught up on stuff that really doesn't have any significance at all. I mean, you get into funky fights about stupid stuff that doesn't really matter. Now, sometimes it does matter, and you should fight it out when it matters, but fight fair and follow these principles if you're going to have the fight. Fight fair, fight clean, be honest, be true, speak the truth in love. Do these things, and this will help you a lot. And then number 7, love those who don't even like you. Now, this is what Jesus is saying. Love those who don't even like you. It's possible to love people that don't even like you, and that maybe even hate you, and that maybe even intend your harm. That's the power of the principles of the kingdom of God and what the King Jesus is inviting us into. Number 8, forgive so that your Father can forgive you. Let it go. Let it go. Don Henley, the Eagles, had it right. I think it's about forgiveness. I think it is. Listen to this story. When Jake O'Hara was 13, his father violated his marriage with an affair. Soon the sexual infidelity slipped into a lifestyle. Sadly, his chronic inability plunged the whole family into years of ongoing nightmare, of confrontations and fights and suicide threats by Jake's mother. When the children finally left home, Jake's parents divorced. Naturally, Jake resented his father. Within a few years, Jake married, and then he told me, my own family began to take on an eerie resemblance to my parents. Jake's parents had 4 sons and a daughter. Jake and his wife had 4 boys and a girl. Mr. O'Hara had traveled frequently. Jake was spending much of his time of the working life out on the road. One day, 11 years into marriage, a friend confronted him with what Jake will always recognize as a message from the Lord. Through that message, the Lord reminded Jake that he would soon reach the same age at which his father became adulterous. That reminder was followed by a very sober warning. Jake would soon face the same failure unless he forgave his father. Mr. O'Hara agreed to meet at a local restaurant. As they sat at the table, Jake recalled the painful and unrelenting bruises of his childhood. Then Jake freely forgave his father and expressed his deep love for him. The two men wept as they understood the enormity of what had just happened. Both men were free. The pattern of sin was broken. Both men had given up all hope for a better past. From that point of release, his father made things right with Jake's mom and their children. Jake told me years later, I had the privilege of leading my father to the Lord. He lived 2 years as a Christian believer. When he died, Jake conducted his funeral. And Jake has escaped the bondage which had held his father throughout much of his life. Now, Jake O'Hara didn't wake up one morning in a mood to forgive. He did not suddenly realize that all the pain of his childhood was gone. Rather, Jake made a choice to forgive. That choice released the emotions which flowed at the table. Our therapeutic age has suggested that we feel our way into action. It is, in fact, just the opposite. Even in the face of emotional evidence to the contrary, we have the power to choose. The choice to forgive is a deliberate and purposeful act. It surveys the landscape of life, recognizes the full range of possibilities and consequences, and then makes a decision to forgive. Forgiveness is not holding our nose, squeezing our eyes shut, uttering a prayer, and then jumping into a new reality because we believe that is what the Bible commands. That kind of forgiveness doesn't produce anything for everyone. To forgive is to make a choice to break the pattern. It takes everyone off the hook. Very often, that choice breaks multi-generational patterns and extends far into the future. Then it goes on. Every home, like every other micro-society, has a distinct culture. In other words, every home reflects a pattern of unspoken assumptions which convey the approved way to perceive, think, and feel. One of the most important things parents can do is to create a culture of forgiveness in the home. How can they do that? It begins with a gracious tongue. Parents should be quick and sincere to speak grace into every corner of every family life. The language of graces and manners, please and thank you and pardon me and I'm sorry, should flavor the family conversation. Additionally, parents should not tolerate disrespect, shrillness, selfishness, or cynicism. That kind of parental vigilance should not be motivated by an expectation of perfection. Instead, responsible parenting recognizes that those are weeds that will choke out the garden of grace. Forgiveness should never be extended purely as a model of teaching or a teaching tool. However, parents should be quick to apologize to each other and to the children. And of course, children should be taught how to extend and receive forgiveness. Finally, a theology of forgiveness, a way of seeing God that involves forgiveness, should permeate the home. Children should know the story of Adam's failure and the greater story of God stepping into human history and choosing to forgive and redeem. Children should be firmly rooted in the assurance that the blood of Christ covers all sin, including any and all violations against them by their parents, siblings, school, or teammates, neighbors, or anyone else. Jake O'Hara got set free because he forgave. Jesus suggests that's the way to have great relationships. Back to the list, number 9, don't judge. Because judgment is always based on assumptions. You really don't know the other person's intentions, although you think you do. You really don't know what they're thinking, although you think you do. And when you think you know what they're thinking or what their motives are, you begin to assume. And assuming makes a mess of things. And assumptions are like barnacles that build up on the bottom of a great ship. And if you let enough of those barnacles build up, it will sink the ship. So don't judge, because judging always involves assumptions. Go directly to the person and talk to them about what happened and get to the bottom of it. Understand what's behind the behavior or what they said, because it may not be at all what you thought. They may be coming from a totally different place than what you could ever imagine. And lastly, number 10, give good things to others because God gives graciously to you. Man, just be gracious. And I'll wrap it all up this way. This is my paraphrase of how Jesus wraps up the Sermon on the Mount. He says this: there's a right way to live that fits God's reign and his kingdom. And there's a wrong way to live that leads to disaster. If you want to have great relationships, I would encourage you, beg you, plead with you to follow the principles that Jesus puts in place, to accept his love and his grace and his forgiveness, and then to share that with other people, because you've been loved greatly, so love greatly.